You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. What if I told you that the reason you feel drained, frustrated, or constantly on edge is because life is too hard, but because you're too attached? Attached to outcomes, attached to people's opinions, attached to how things should go. And that the moment you loosen that grip, not by becoming cold, but by becoming steady, you unlock a kind of peace most people spend their entire lives chasing. Emotional detachment isn't about shutting down or pretending you don't care. It's about caring wisely. It's about choosing clarity over chaos, power over impulse, calm over reaction. The Stoics understood something most of us were never taught. When you stop trying to control what isn't yours, your inner world becomes unshakable. In this video, you'll discover why detachment is not indifference, it's strength. You'll learn how to protect your energy, quiet mental noise, and respond to life instead of being ruled by it. Watch until the very end, because the final insight might completely change how you see control, peace, and yourself. Number 1, emotional detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. You need to understand that deeply, not just intellectually, but in your bones. When you hear the word detachment, you might imagine someone distant, unfeeling, shut off from warmth. That's not what this is. That's avoidance. That's fear in disguise. True emotional detachment is something far more powerful. It's the ability to feel without drowning, to care without clinging, to stay steady while everything around you trembles. It's the difference between being controlled by your emotions and being guided by wisdom. And if you want inner peace, real, unshakable peace, you must learn this distinction. The Stoics understood this with razor-sharp precision. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." That's clarity, that's detachment. He wasn't telling you to stop feeling. He was telling you to stop surrendering your power to every passing impression. When something happens, your first reaction may surge up fast and hot. That's human, but you are not required to bow to it. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to question it. You are allowed to say, "Is this within my control?" And if it's not, you release your grip. Not because you don't care, but because you care about your peace more. You don't detach to become indifferent. You detach to see clearly. When you're emotionally entangled in every outcome, every opinion, every shift in tone, your vision blurs. You react instead of respond. You chase approval. You resist what already is. Clarity dissolves that fog. It lets you observe your feelings as signals, not commands. Imagine your emotions as weather passing through the sky of your mind. Storms may gather, winds may howl, but you are the sky, not the storm. That's not cold, that's composed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Notice what he emphasizes: power over your mind, not suppression, not numbness. Power. Emotional detachment is claiming that power. It's saying, "I refuse to let every external ripple dictate my internal state." That's strength wrapped in calm. That's discipline with a soft face. You can start practicing this today. The first exercise is simple but not easy. Delay your reaction. When something stirs you, irritation, disappointment, excitement, wait, even 10 seconds. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out fully. Tell yourself, "This is just an impression." The Stoics called it that on purpose. An impression is not truth. It's a first draft. Your job is to review it before signing your name to it. Over time, this small pause becomes your shield. It gives you space. And in that space, clarity grows. Another practice: separate facts from interpretation. Write it down if you need to. On one side, list what actually happened, stripped of adjectives. On the other side, write the story your mind immediately created. You'll begin to see how quickly you add meaning, motive, and drama. Detachment allows you to peel that away. It trains you to live closer to reality and farther from assumption. And reality, even when it's uncomfortable, is always lighter than the tangled web of imagined narratives. Understand this clearly. Detachment doesn't shrink your heart, it refines it. When you're no longer desperate for outcomes, your care becomes cleaner. You give because you choose to, not because you fear losing something. You love without gripping. You engage without begging. That is warmth rooted in strength. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Emotional detachment dismantles that unnecessary suffering. It quiets the exaggerated fears. It steadies the racing mind. It brings you back to what is instead of what might be. You must also train yourself to distinguish between influence and control. This is critical. You can influence your effort, your attitude, your words. You cannot control how others interpret them. You cannot control outcomes. You cannot control whether someone stays or leaves, praises or criticizes. Detachment is accepting this without resentment. It's releasing the illusion of control. And when you release that illusion, your nervous system softens. You stop bracing for impact. You stop gripping the wheel so tightly. You drive, yes, but you stop trying to control the entire road. Try this mental rehearsal. Each morning, remind yourself that challenges, misunderstandings, and discomfort may arise, not in a fearful way, in a prepared way. Marcus Aurelius practiced negative visualization, not to become pessimistic, but to become steady. When you anticipate that not everything will go your way, you're less shocked when it doesn't. And when you're less shocked, you're less reactive. That is clarity at work. There's also a subtle shift you must make in your language. Instead of saying, "This ruined my day," say, "I am experiencing frustration." Do you see the difference? One statement gives the event total authority over you. The other acknowledges the emotion without surrendering to it. Words shape perception. Perception shapes experience. Choose carefully. Train yourself to speak from ownership, not victimhood. Emotional detachment is not about building walls. It's about building boundaries within yourself. It's about recognizing that your peace is your responsibility. No one else can guard it for you. No one else can preserve it. You must decide that your inner stability matters more than winning arguments, more than being understood, more than controlling outcomes. That decision changes everything. And here's the truth you may not want to hear. Clarity requires courage. It's easier to react. It's easier to blame. It's easier to spiral. Detachment asks you to sit with discomfort without dramatizing it. It asks you to feel fully without acting impulsively. It asks you to let go when your ego demands control. That takes strength, but the reward is enormous. You move through life lighter. You stop taking everything personally. You stop exhausting yourself with mental battles that never needed to be fought. So begin now. Pause before you speak. Question your first interpretation. Breathe when tension rises. Remind yourself what is and isn't in your control. Practice daily reflection in the evening. Review your reactions without judgment, simply observing where you were clear and where you were carried away. This gentle awareness sharpens your discipline over time. Detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of mastery. It is the quiet confidence that you can experience emotion without being ruled by it. It is the steady gaze in the middle of chaos. It is the decision to remain centered when the world tempts you to spin. You are not meant to be cold. You are meant to be calm. You are not meant to withdraw from life. You are meant to engage with it wisely. Emotional detachment is clarity. And clarity is peace. Guard it, practice it, choose it again and again until it becomes your nature. Number 2, you suffer more from interpretation than from reality. You suffer more from imagination than from reality. That line from Seneca is not just poetic wisdom, it's a mirror. And if you're honest with yourself, you've seen your own reflection in it. The sting you feel most days isn't coming from what actually happened. It's coming from the story you immediately attach to it, the meaning you assign, the silent narrative you build in seconds. Emotional detachment begins right there, in that thin space between an event and your interpretation of it. And if you want inner peace, not the fragile kind that collapses under pressure, but the steady, grounded kind, you have to learn to work in that space. You don't control what happens. You already know that. Epictetus said it clearly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. But here's what often gets overlooked. Your reaction is shaped by your interpretation. The event itself is usually neutral, it simply is. Your mind, however, rushes in like an overeager narrator, assigning motive, predicting consequences, dramatizing outcomes. And before you know it, you're not reacting to reality. You're reacting to your version of it. That's where the suffering multiplies. Pause for a moment and let this sink in. Most of your emotional turbulence is self-generated, not intentionally, not consciously, but automatically. You interpret silence as rejection, delay as disrespect, criticism as condemnation, uncertainty as disaster. And once that interpretation settles in, your body responds as if the threat is real. Your heart races, your jaw tightens, your thoughts spiral, yet nothing concrete has changed outside of you. The battlefield exists in your mind. This is why emotional detachment is so powerful. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent. It means you stop believing every thought that flashes through your awareness. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Your estimate, your judgment, that's the lever. And if you can learn to loosen your grip on that estimate, peace starts to emerge. So how do you actually do this? Start by slowing down your interpretations. When something triggers you, resist the urge to immediately define it. Instead, tell yourself, this is just an event, nothing more. Strip it down to bare facts. Remove adjectives, remove assumptions, remove imagined intent. Train your mind to separate observation from evaluation. It sounds simple, but it requires discipline. The mind loves drama, it loves certainty, it loves filling in blanks. You have to gently interrupt that habit. Here's a practical exercise. When you feel emotionally charged, write down exactly what happened in one neutral sentence. Then, in a separate sentence, write down the meaning you attach to it. You'll start to see the gap. That gap is freedom. That gap is where you reclaim your power. Because once you see that interpretation is optional, you stop being enslaved by it. You must also question your first story, not with hostility but with curiosity. Ask yourself, is this interpretation the only possible explanation? What evidence do I actually have? What am I assuming? Most of the time, your mind is operating on incomplete data, yet it behaves as if it has absolute certainty. Challenge that certainty, gently, persistently. The goal is not to suppress emotion. The goal is to prevent imagination from masquerading as truth. Another practice, delay your conclusions. When your mind jumps to a negative meaning, tell yourself you will not finalize that judgment for 24 hours. Let it breathe. Let it settle. You'll notice that many intense interpretations lose their weight with time. Urgency fades. Drama dissolves. What felt catastrophic begins to look ordinary. This is emotional detachment in action, not numbness but patience. You should also train yourself to zoom out. The Stoics constantly reminded themselves of perspective. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on how small individual events are in the vast flow of time. When you widen your lens, your interpretations shrink. What feels enormous in the moment becomes a minor ripple in the larger picture of your life. Practice asking, will this matter in a year, in 5 years, in the scope of my entire existence? Most interpretations cannot survive that scale. And here's something even deeper. Your interpretations are often tied to ego, to identity, to the image you protect. When something threatens that image, your mind reacts defensively. But emotional detachment asks you to loosen your attachment to ego itself. You are not your reputation. You are not your momentary success or failure. You are not the passing opinions of others. The more you internalize this, the less reactive your interpretations become. There's another layer too. Many interpretations are rooted in fear, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of insignificance. If you want real inner peace, you must confront those fears instead of disguising them as outrage or anxiety. Sit with the discomfort. Observe it without immediately constructing a story around it. Breathe through it. Let it exist without narration. You'll discover that feelings, when not fed by interpretation, are surprisingly temporary. Make it a daily discipline to practice mental distancing. When a thought arises, say to yourself, "I am noticing the thought that." This subtle shift reminds you that you are the observer, not the thought itself. You create space, and in that space, suffering loses its grip. This is what emotional detachment feels like, not withdrawal but clarity. You should also limit how often you rehearse negative interpretations. The more you replay them, the more real they feel. Catch yourself mid-rumination and redirect your focus to something tangible: your breath, your posture, the present moment. Peace is found in what is happening now, not in imagined futures or reconstructed pasts. Understand this clearly. Reality is often simpler than your mind makes it. Reality is just a sequence of events. Your interpretation is the storm layered on top of it. When you learn to quiet that storm, you don't eliminate difficulty. You eliminate unnecessary suffering. That distinction changes everything. Inner peace is not about controlling the world. It's about disciplining your perception. It's about choosing clarity over assumption, patience over panic, perspective over projection. And yes, this takes practice. You will slip. You will catch yourself spiraling. That's normal. The key is not perfection. The key is awareness. Each time you pause before interpreting, you weaken the habit of mental exaggeration. Each time you question your first reaction, you strengthen your composure. Each time you detach from a destructive narrative, you reclaim a piece of your tranquility. Remember Seneca's warning. Remember Epictetus' clarity. Remember Marcus Aurelius' steady reminder that your judgment is the true source of disturbance. These aren't abstract philosophies. They are daily tools. Use them. And here's the quiet truth. When you stop suffering from your interpretations, the world feels lighter. Not because it changed, but because you did. Number 3, detachment protects your energy from unnecessary drama. Detachment protects your energy from unnecessary drama, and you need to understand that on a deeper level than just nodding along and saying it sounds wise. Your energy is not infinite. Your attention is not cheap. Every time you get pulled into chaos that has nothing to do with your values or your purpose, you pay for it. You pay with your focus, your clarity, your sleep, your peace. And most of the time, you don't even realize you're the one handing it over. Stoicism calls you to wake up. As Epictetus reminds you in the Enchiridion, it's not things that upset us but our judgments about them. That single line is a gate. Walk through it. The drama around you is noise. Your judgment is the amplifier. Detachment is simply lowering the volume. You don't have to react to every opinion, every provocation, every emotional wave that crashes in your direction. You have the power to stand still. When you detach, you're not becoming cold. You're becoming disciplined. You're deciding that your inner world is not a public park where anyone can trample through with muddy boots. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Read that slowly. Power over your mind, that's the core of it. Drama feeds on reaction. It survives on your outrage, your defense, your need to correct or convince. When you detach, you starve it. You refuse to be the fuel. You must start treating your energy like a sacred resource. That means noticing when your body tightens, when your thoughts begin to spiral, when you feel the urge to jump in and fix, argue, or prove. Pause right there. That pause is the doorway to detachment. Instead of leaning forward emotionally, lean back mentally. Take one slow breath, then another. Say to yourself, "This is outside my control." That phrase is not passive. It is powerful. It separates what is yours from what is not. The Stoics were relentless about this distinction. Control your thoughts, your actions, your character. Release the rest. Practice this daily. Write down 2 columns, what I control, what I don't. Be honest. You'll quickly see how much drama lives in the second column. Detachment protects you because it creates space. And space is where peace lives. When you are entangled in emotional turbulence, there is no room to think clearly. You become reactive, predictable, easy to provoke. But when you detach, Even slightly, you introduce distance between stimulus and response. That distance is strength. Viktor Frankl, though not a Stoic in the classical sense, echoed this timeless principle. Between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies your freedom. You need to train yourself to live in that space. Not occasionally, consistently. Make it a habit to delay your emotional reactions. If something stirs you, tell yourself you will respond later. Give it an hour. Give it a day. Watch how the intensity fades. Most drama evaporates when denied immediate attention. You also have to let go of the illusion that you are responsible for managing everyone else's emotions. That belief will drain you faster than anything. You are not here to absorb chaos. You are not obligated to solve feelings that are not yours. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." So much of what exhausts you is anticipated conflict, rehearsed arguments, imagined outcomes. Detachment cuts through that fog. It asks you to return to what is real and present. Right now, in this moment, are you safe? Are you breathing? Are you capable of choosing your next action with integrity? Stay there. Stay grounded in the present instead of wandering into emotional storms that haven't even arrived. You can build this skill deliberately. Start with a daily reflection practice. At the end of each day, review moments when you felt pulled into unnecessary tension. Don't judge yourself, just observe. Ask, what did I believe in that moment? What story did I tell myself? Then rewrite it in a calmer tone. Replace "this is unbearable" with "this is uncomfortable, but I can handle it." Replace "they shouldn't act this way" with "I cannot control their behavior." This exercise strengthens your inner boundary. Over time, you'll notice you react less and observe more. Another practice, visual distancing. When emotions flare, imagine you are watching the situation from above, like an eagle circling high in the sky. From that altitude, everything shrinks. Voices soften, movements slow. You see patterns instead of personal attacks. This mental shift cools the intensity. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to view events from a cosmic perspective to see how small and temporary they are. Try it. Shrink the moment. Expand your awareness. Drama loses its grip when you stop magnifying it. You also need to embrace silence. Not the kind that simmers with resentment, but the kind that is rooted in self-command. When you don't react, you protect your nervous system. You keep your pulse steady. You conserve your strength. You don't have to win every exchange. You don't have to clarify every misunderstanding. Detachment allows you to walk away internally even if you remain physically present. Repeat to yourself, "I choose peace over proving a point." Make that your mantra. Say it until it becomes instinct. This doesn't mean you avoid responsibility or suppress emotions. It means you process them without letting them hijack you. Sit with your feelings privately, journal them, name them, feel them fully, but don't let them dictate your actions. That's maturity. That's Stoic discipline. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Mastery requires practice. It requires you to catch yourself mid-reaction and choose differently. It's uncomfortable at first. You may feel the itch to respond, to argue, to correct. Let the itch pass. Not every impulse deserves obedience. Over time, you will notice something remarkable. Your inner landscape becomes quieter. The noise that once demanded your attention begins to fade. You stop scanning for conflict. You stop rehearsing defenses. You start moving through the world with a steadier presence. That steadiness intimidates drama. Chaos prefers easy targets. When you detach, you are no longer easy to pull. You become grounded, unshakable, calm in a way that doesn't need to announce itself. So begin today. Guard your energy. Notice where you leak it. Practice the pause. Write the 2 columns. Use the eagle's perspective. Repeat the Stoic reminders until they carve themselves into your thinking. You are not required to carry emotional burdens that do not belong to you. You are not obligated to react to every disturbance. You can choose calm. You can choose restraint. You can choose to conserve your strength for what truly matters. Inner peace is not found by controlling the world. It is found by mastering your response to it. Detachment is not indifference. It is intelligent self-preservation. And when you commit to it, when you truly commit, you'll discover that the drama that once consumed you now passes by like distant thunder, heard, but no longer felt in your bones. Number 4, you can care deeply without clinging tightly. You've probably been taught in subtle and not so subtle ways that if you truly care, you must hold on tightly. That love means gripping. That loyalty means attachment. That devotion requires emotional dependency. But deep down, you already sense something isn't right about that equation. Because the tighter you cling, the more anxious you feel. The more you try to secure what you value, the more fragile it seems. Emotional detachment doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean coldness. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you learn how to care without chaining your peace to outcomes you can't control. And that shift changes everything. The Stoics understood this clearly. Epictetus reminded you that some things are up to us and some things are not. That's not just philosophy, it's a boundary. When you cling tightly, you blur that boundary. You begin trying to control how others feel, how situations unfold, how life behaves. And life resists, it always does. When you detach, you step back into your rightful domain, your judgments, your choices, your actions. You can still care deeply, you can still show up fully, but you stop demanding guarantees from the universe. Caring without clinging requires strength, real strength, because clinging is often disguised fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of change. When you detach emotionally, you confront those fears instead of covering them with control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Read that again. Let it settle. You have power over your mind, not outcomes, not other people's loyalty, not permanence. When you internalize that truth, you begin to love with open hands instead of closed fists. This doesn't mean you become passive. It doesn't mean you care less. In fact, paradoxically, you often care better. When you aren't gripping, you listen more clearly. When you aren't afraid of losing, you stop acting from desperation. Your presence becomes steadier, calmer, cleaner. You give because you choose to, not because you're trying to secure something in return. That kind of care feels lighter, and strangely, it feels stronger too. So how do you practice this? Start by noticing your impulses. When you feel the urge to overthink, to seek reassurance, to mentally rehearse worst-case scenarios, pause. Don't judge yourself. Just observe. Say internally, "This is attachment speaking." That simple awareness weakens its grip. The Stoics trained this muscle deliberately. Seneca advised rehearsing loss, not to become pessimistic, but to become prepared. You can try this gently. Imagine, briefly, that what you value is not permanent. Not to scare yourself, but to remind yourself that nothing external ever was. Then return to the present moment and appreciate it as it is. This practice, often called negative visualization, builds gratitude without dependency. You must also separate love from possession. Caring is active goodwill. Clinging is ownership disguised as affection. Ask yourself, am I trying to support or am I trying to control? That question alone can recalibrate your mindset. Control breeds tension. Support creates freedom. And freedom, even in relationships, is where peace lives. Another exercise, practice releasing small things daily. Let someone misunderstand you without correcting them immediately. Let a minor plan change without resisting it. Let silence sit without rushing to fill it. These micro-releases train your nervous system to tolerate uncertainty. The more you practice, the more your inner stability strengthens. You stop panicking when things shift. You adapt. You flow. You might worry that detachment will make you distant. It won't, unless you confuse detachment with withdrawal. Emotional detachment in the Stoic sense is internal alignment. It's loving while understanding impermanence. It's showing up fully while knowing nothing external belongs to you. Epictetus put it bluntly, "Never say about anything, 'I have lost it,' but only, 'I have returned it.'" That mindset softens fear. It reminds you that everything you cherish is on loan from the universe. When you accept that, you stop gripping so tightly. There's a quiet confidence that grows in you when you practice this. You stop bargaining emotionally. You stop performing for security. You stop shrinking yourself to prevent abandonment. Instead, you root yourself in character. Virtue becomes your anchor: wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. These are yours, they cannot be taken. That realization is liberating. Try this practical reflection at the end of each day. Ask yourself, where did I cling today? Where did I act from fear of losing? Write it down. Not to shame yourself, but to study your patterns. Then ask, how could I respond from grounded care instead? Over time, you'll notice shifts. Your reactions slow down, your need for reassurance decreases. You begin responding rather than grasping. Breathing exercises can help too. When you feel attachment tightening in your chest, breathe slowly, 4 counts in, 6 counts out. As you exhale, imagine loosening your grip, not abandoning, just loosening. Repeat internally, I can care without controlling. Do this consistently. Repetition rewires you. Remember, clinging often creates the very instability you fear. Anxiety leaks into your tone. Pressure creeps into your interactions. When you detach, you remove that invisible weight. Your energy steadies, people feel less constrained around you, and even if outcomes change, your center holds. Peace comes from this center, not from guarantees, not from permanence, not from securing every variable. Emotional detachment allows you to participate fully in life without being consumed by it. You love deeply, you invest sincerely, you commit wholeheartedly, but your identity remains anchored within, and that's the key. You are not your attachments, you are not your relationships, you are not your outcomes. You are your judgments, your choices, your integrity. When you remember that, fear loosens. When fear loosens, clinging dissolves. What remains is steady care, warm but not desperate, committed but not enslaved. So begin today. Notice where you grip. Gently open your hand. Practice gratitude without possession. Practice love without ownership. Practice presence without panic. It will feel unfamiliar at first, maybe even uncomfortable. Stay with it. Growth often does. You can care deeply without clinging tightly. You can love without losing yourself. You can invest without imprisoning your peace. And when you learn that balance, when you truly embody it, you'll discover something profound. Inner peace was never about withdrawing from life. It was about engaging with it from a place of strength rather than fear. Number 5, control what you respond to, not what happens to you. Control what you respond to, not what happens to you. Let that sink in. You don't control the weather of the world. You don't command other people's moods, their words, their opinions, or their impulses. You don't get to veto what life throws across your path, but you do control your response. And that single shift in awareness, subtle, quiet, powerful, changes everything. The Stoics were relentless about this. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." That line is simple, almost blunt, yet it holds the blueprint for inner peace. You suffer when you blur the boundary. You suffer when you try to control what was never yours to command. Emotional detachment begins the moment you stop wrestling with reality and start mastering your reaction to it. You have more power than you think, but it's not the kind of power the ego craves. It's not loud. It doesn't dominate rooms. It doesn't silence others. It governs the self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Notice what he didn't say. He didn't promise comfort. He didn't promise fairness. He promised strength. That strength grows each time you pause before responding. Each time you refuse to let your emotions drag you by the collar. Each time you choose deliberate action over automatic reaction. That is where detachment lies, not in cold indifference but in disciplined awareness. Right now, start noticing your impulses. Not to judge them, not to suppress them, just to see them. When something happens, something irritating, unsettling, disappointing, there is a flicker inside you, a spark. That spark is the beginning of your reaction. Most people let it ignite into a wildfire. You don't have to. Train yourself to sit in that flicker for a breath longer than feels comfortable. Count slowly to 3. Inhale deeply. Exhale with intention. Create a gap. Viktor Frankl, though not a Stoic in the classical sense, captured the spirit of it perfectly. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Live in that space. Expand it. Protect it. That space is your sovereignty. You may feel the pull to react instantly, to defend, to explain, to correct, to lash out. Resist that pull. It's not strength, it's habit. Habits can be retrained. Begin a daily practice of intentional delay. When something stirs you emotionally, wait, not forever, just long enough to ask yourself one question: is this within my control? If the answer is no, release the urge to fix it. If the answer is yes, respond calmly and deliberately. This single question will filter out half your unnecessary suffering. Make it your mantra. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care wisely. You stop investing emotional energy in what cannot be changed. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about that. How much of your distress is manufactured by your interpretation rather than the event itself? You amplify events by adding meaning, by replaying them, by predicting outcomes that haven't even occurred. Emotional detachment invites you to interrupt that pattern. When your mind begins spinning narratives, step back. Say to yourself, "This is just a thought." Then redirect your attention to what you can do now. Not later, not hypothetically. Now practice mental reframing. It's a discipline. When something happens that feels negative, immediately search for a neutral or constructive interpretation. Not a forced optimism, not denial, just balance. Remind yourself that events are not inherently good or bad. Your judgment makes them so. That's straight from Marcus Aurelius. Write it down if you have to. Carry it with you. Repeat it until it becomes instinctive. You are not at the mercy of events. You are at the mercy of your interpretation of events. Change the interpretation and you change the emotional outcome. Start training your emotional muscles daily. Each morning, anticipate challenges. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of difficulties. Spend 5 minutes imagining that things may not go smoothly. Expect interruptions, expect misunderstandings, expect inconvenience. When they happen, you won't be shocked. You'll be prepared, and preparation reduces emotional turbulence. You won't react with outrage because you've already rehearsed composure. You'll nod internally and think, "I knew this was possible." Then you'll choose your response. Another exercise, journaling at the end of the day. Ask yourself where you reacted impulsively. Don't shame yourself, just observe. Then ask, what would a more controlled response have looked like? Write it down. Visualize yourself responding that way next time. This builds awareness. Awareness builds choice. Choice builds freedom. Over time, you'll notice a shift. The space between event and response will widen naturally. What once triggered you will start to feel manageable. Not because the world softened, but because you did. Remember, emotional detachment is not withdrawal from life. It's mastery within it. You are still engaged, you still act, you still care. But you no longer allow external chaos to dictate your internal climate. You become like the Stoic sage described by Epictetus, steady, grounded, unshaken by what is beyond control. That steadiness intimidates chaos. It silences unnecessary drama. It gives you clarity where others lose themselves in noise. When you feel overwhelmed, return to the present moment. Ask yourself, what is actually happening right now? Not what might happen, not what could happen right now. Most distress evaporates under that question. The present moment is usually far less catastrophic than the mind's projections. Anchor yourself there. Breathe. Observe, choose. Make this a discipline, not a mood. You won't always feel like responding calmly. That's precisely when the practice matters most. Detachment is built in repetition, in small, consistent acts of restraint, in the quiet decision to respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally. You don't need perfection, you need commitment. Every time you catch yourself before reacting, you strengthen your inner authority. Control what you respond to, not what happens to you. Say it again. Let it become part of your identity. You are not a puppet of circumstance. You are not a slave to impulse. You are the steward of your reactions, and that stewardship is the foundation of inner peace. Peace isn't found in controlling the world, it's found in mastering your response to it. Build that mastery patiently. Practice daily. Guard your mind like it's sacred territory, because it is. Number 6, expectations are the root of emotional turbulence. Expectations are subtle. They don't usually announce themselves. They slip quietly into your mind and settle there, disguised as preferences, standards, or how things should be. And before you notice what's happening, they begin steering your emotions. The moment reality refuses to cooperate with your mental script, frustration rises. Disappointment follows. Then resentment. You feel thrown off balance, not because something catastrophic occurred, but because what happened did not match what you silently demanded. This is where emotional turbulence begins. It doesn't come from the world itself. It comes from the collision between reality and your expectations. You have to see this clearly if you want inner peace. Expectations are not harmless. They are contracts you draft in your own mind and expect others or life itself to sign without consent. When they don't, you suffer. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." Read that slowly. The problem isn't events. The problem is your insistence that events obey you. Think about how often your mood shifts because something didn't unfold the way you imagined. You expected appreciation. You expected understanding. You expected smooth progress. You expected fairness. And when those invisible demands weren't met, you felt shaken. Not devastated by facts, but disturbed by violated expectations. The turbulence isn't in the situation. It's in the gap between what is and what you thought should be. Emotional detachment begins right here, not by becoming cold, not by suppressing feeling, but by loosening your grip on how things must unfold. You don't have to eliminate preferences. You simply stop turning them into requirements for peace. This is a shift in posture, a quiet recalibration. You move from rigid insistence to flexible acceptance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. The strength he's talking about isn't loud. It's not dramatic, it's steady. When you release expectations, you stop outsourcing your emotional state to circumstances. You reclaim authorship over your inner world. Notice how expectations multiply when you're not paying attention. Your mind predicts outcomes constantly. It rehearses how conversations should go. It drafts imaginary reactions from others. It paints pictures of how tomorrow ought to unfold. Then it clings to those images as if they are promises. But they are not promises, they are projections. And projections are fragile, they shatter easily. If you want peace, you must challenge this habit. You must catch yourself in the act of expecting. Pause, ask yourself, am I demanding that reality follow my script? This question alone can soften your reaction. It creates space. And space is power. Practice this. At the start of each day, tell yourself that nothing owes you compliance. Not people. Not schedules, not outcomes. Say it quietly but mean it. Remind yourself that everything is allowed to unfold as it will. You are here to respond, not to control. This mental rehearsal builds resilience. It prepares you for friction without turning friction into suffering. There is another layer to expectations that you must confront. Often, they are tied to identity. You expect respect because you believe you deserve it. You expect ease because you think you've earned it. You expect alignment because it feels just. But when those expectations are violated, your ego feels attacked, and that's when emotions surge. The Stoics urged you to examine these attachments. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Expectations live in imagination. They are mental constructions. When they crumble, it's your imagined world that collapses, not necessarily the real one. Recognize that. Let it humble you. Let it free you. You can train yourself to replace expectation with curiosity. Instead of insisting on a specific outcome, become open to whatever unfolds. This doesn't mean passivity. It means adaptability. You still act with intention. You still aim with purpose, but you detach from the demand that the result must match your desire. Here's a practical exercise. Before any significant interaction or event, say to yourself, "This may not go the way I picture it, and that's okay." Repeat it until your nervous system relaxes. Feel the difference between bracing for disappointment and allowing for unpredictability. The latter softens you, it steadies you. Another practice, conduct a nightly reflection. Ask yourself where you felt emotional disturbance during the day. Trace it back. Was there an expectation underneath? Almost always there is. Identify it specifically. Name it. Then rewrite it into a preference. Instead of "this should have happened," shift to "I would have preferred this, but it wasn't guaranteed." That small linguistic adjustment rewires your mindset over time. You must also understand that expectations create conditional happiness. You tell yourself, "I'll be at peace when," and then you fill in the blank. When things go smoothly, when people behave properly, when outcomes align. But peace tied to conditions is fragile. It's temporary. Emotional detachment breaks this dependency. It allows you to feel steady regardless of the weather outside. This doesn't make you indifferent, it makes you anchored. You care deeply, but you don't cling. You engage fully, but you don't demand. That balance is powerful. It transforms you from reactive to composed. Expectations promise security. They whisper that if things go your way, you'll feel safe. But true security comes from adaptability. When you know you can handle disappointment without unraveling, you stop fearing unmet expectations. And when you stop fearing them, you stop creating so many of them. Try this discipline. Deliberately lower your expectations in small ways. Not your standards, your expectations. Expect less praise, expect delays, expect imperfection. Not cynically, but realistically. Notice how this reduces emotional spikes. You become harder to rattle, more difficult to provoke, less dependent on external validation. And here's something subtle. When you release expectations, you often experience more gratitude, because instead of measuring reality against a rigid standard, you meet it as it is. You begin to appreciate what shows up rather than mourning what didn't. Gratitude flourishes where entitlement fades. This is not about suppressing desire. It's about disentangling desire from peace. You can want things without needing them for emotional stability. That distinction is everything. So start today. Observe your expectations without judgment. Question them. Loosen them. Replace rigid demands with flexible intentions. Remember that reality is not obligated to match your imagination. And remember that your calm does not have to depend on outcomes. Inner peace isn't found by controlling the world. It's found by releasing your grip on how the world must behave. When you stop insisting, you stop suffering unnecessarily. When you detach from expectation, you detach from turbulence. And in that detachment, you find something steady, something quiet, something deeply empowering. You find yourself. Number 7, silence and space create emotional strength. Silence and space create emotional strength, but not in the way you might think. It's not about shutting down or becoming cold. It's about reclaiming your inner ground. When you stop filling every gap with words, reactions, explanations, and defenses, something subtle begins to happen inside you. You feel your center again. You remember that your power was never in controlling outcomes or convincing people. It was in mastering your response. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Silence is how you realize it. Space is how you protect it. You've been conditioned to react quickly, to answer immediately, to explain yourself, to jump in when tension rises. But every quick reaction leaks energy. Every unnecessary reply chips away at your composure. When you practice silence, you interrupt that pattern. You create a pause between stimulus and response. And in that pause, you grow stronger, not louder, stronger, because strength isn't force, it's restraint. It's the calm decision not to let someone else's emotion dictate your state. That kind of restraint doesn't make you passive, it makes you deliberate. Emotional detachment begins in that deliberate pause. You don't suppress your feelings. You observe them. You let them move through you without immediately acting on them. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Notice the emphasis, how you react, not how fast, not how intensely, how. Silence gives you the space to choose that how. And when you choose instead of reflexively reacting, you build emotional muscle. You train your mind to stay steady under pressure. You become harder to shake. Space works the same way. When you create distance from emotional chaos, even internally, you stop being entangled in it. You don't need to chase every misunderstanding. You don't need to fix every perception. You don't need to win every argument. Space allows perspective, and perspective dissolves urgency. What felt overwhelming begins to shrink when you step back. This isn't avoidance, it's clarity. You are stepping out of the storm so you can see the sky again. Start practicing intentional silence. Not the resentful kind, not the silent treatment, the grounded kind. The kind where you breathe, soften your jaw, relax your shoulders, and simply choose not to respond right away. Count slowly to 10 before speaking. Feel your heartbeat settle. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If it's not, release it. If it is, respond calmly. This tiny ritual, repeated consistently, rewires you. It teaches your nervous system that you are in charge. You will notice discomfort at first. Silence can feel awkward. Space can feel lonely. That's because you've grown used to constant stimulation, constant exchange, constant validation. But discomfort is the training ground. Stay with it. Let the urge to fill the silence rise and fall without acting on it. That urge is not authority, it's habit, and habits can be reshaped. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When you create space, you give your imagination less fuel. You stop rehearsing conversations. You stop replaying words. You stop predicting outcomes. Instead, you anchor yourself in what is actually happening right now. The present moment is rarely as dramatic as your thoughts make it. Silence helps you return to that simplicity. Try this exercise daily. Sit alone for 5 minutes without distractions. No phone, no music, no planning. Just sit and observe your thoughts as if they belong to someone else. Don't judge them, don't wrestle with them. Watch them pass. This builds detachment. You begin to see that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of them, and the observer is calm, the observer is steady. Another practice: when you feel emotionally charged, physically step back. If you're standing, take one literal step backward. If you're seated, lean back and exhale slowly. This small physical shift reinforces psychological space. Your body signals to your brain that you are not under threat, that you can respond thoughtfully. Over time, this becomes automatic. You won't need to remind yourself. Your composure will come naturally. Emotional strength isn't dramatic, it's quiet. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't seek applause. It is the steady pulse beneath your ribs when tension rises. It is the measured tone in your voice when others expect sharpness. It is the absence of panic when circumstances shift. Silence cultivates that steadiness because it forces you to confront your internal noise. And when you can sit peacefully with your own thoughts, other people's reactions lose their power over you. You don't have to attend every emotional invitation. Remind yourself of that. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every tone deserves correction. Not every misunderstanding requires explanation. Ask, will engaging strengthen my peace or weaken it? If it weakens it, choose space. Walk away internally if not physically. Redirect your focus to something within your control, your breathing, your posture, your next deliberate action. There is dignity in restraint. There is authority in calmness. When you no longer rush to defend or explain, people feel the difference. More importantly, you feel the difference. You stop living in reaction mode. You start living from intention. That shift changes everything. Make this your commitment today. Practice one intentional pause, just one. Let silence stretch a little longer than usual. Feel the strength in that stretch. Tomorrow, extend it again. Build it like a muscle, quietly, consistently, without announcing it. Emotional detachment isn't about withdrawing from life. It's about engaging with it on your terms. It's about realizing that your peace is too valuable to be traded for temporary emotional satisfaction. And when you forget, because you will return to the Stoic reminder Marcus Aurelius repeated to himself, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do. Let that sink in, only what you do. Silence and space bring you back to that simple truth. They remind you that your inner world is yours to govern. Choose quiet strength. Choose deliberate distance. Choose to respond instead of react. In that choice, again and again, you will discover something powerful. Peace was never outside you. It was waiting in the space you were afraid to create. Number 8. Detachment sharpens decision-making under pressure. When pressure rises, your first instinct is rarely your wisest one. Your pulse quickens, your thoughts scatter, and suddenly every decision feels urgent, personal, and heavy. This is exactly where emotional detachment becomes your greatest ally. Not coldness, not indifference, detachment. The kind the Stoics practiced. The kind Epictetus spoke about when he said, "It's not things that disturb us but our judgments about things." Under pressure, your judgments tend to run wild. You interpret, you assume, you exaggerate consequences. But when you deliberately create distance between the event and your reaction, your mind clears, and clarity sharpens decision-making like nothing else can. You need to understand this deeply. Pressure does not ruin decisions. Emotion without control does. When you're attached to outcomes, attached to approval, attached to avoiding discomfort, you distort your thinking. You start choosing what feels relieving in the moment instead of what is right in the long term. Detachment cuts through that fog. It allows you to look at the situation almost as if you are an outside observer. You're still involved, you still care, but you are no longer drowning in it. That subtle shift changes everything. Think of detachment as stepping back half a step inside your own mind, not physically, internally. When tension builds, instead of collapsing into the feeling, you pause and watch it. You notice the surge, you label it, you breathe, and then you decide. That space, small but powerful, is where wisdom lives. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength shows up most clearly when you refuse to let emotion hijack your thinking under stress. You sharpen your decisions by refusing to personalize everything. Pressure often feels threatening because you interpret it as an attack on your identity. Your ego flares up. You want to defend, react, prove, correct. But detachment reminds you that most situations are not about you. They are simply events unfolding. When you stop seeing pressure as a reflection of your worth, your mind stops scrambling to protect itself. You become steady, and steadiness produces better judgment. This is not about suppressing feeling. Suppression makes you brittle. Detachment makes you stable. There's a difference. Suppression says, "I shouldn't feel this." Detachment says, "I feel this, but I won't let it control me." That distinction is subtle but transformative. Under pressure, you will feel urgency. You will feel discomfort. The practice is to let the emotion pass through without giving it authority over your choices. You are not your first impulse. You are the one who chooses what to do with it. Start training this skill deliberately. Do not wait for high-stakes moments. Practice when the pressure is mild. When something irritates you, resist the urge to respond immediately. Count slowly to 5. Feel your breath. Observe the sensation in your chest or stomach. Then ask yourself one question. What is within my control right now? This question, central to Stoic philosophy, pulls your focus away from chaos and back to agency. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Under pressure, imagination runs ahead of facts. Detachment reins it back in. You should also practice negative visualization, a Stoic exercise designed to build composure. Briefly imagine the worst reasonable outcome. Sit with it. Accept it mentally. Tell yourself, if this happens, I will still act with integrity. When you pre-accept possible outcomes, fear loosens its grip. Your decisions become less frantic because you're no longer trying to escape every possible discomfort. You've already faced it in your mind and survived. That makes you calm, and calm people decide better. Another powerful exercise is to write your thoughts down before acting. When pressure clouds your mind, your thinking becomes tangled. Putting it on paper forces structure. Ask yourself, what are the facts? What assumptions am I adding? What outcome am I attached to? What would the most rational version of me choose? This small ritual separates emotion from evaluation. It trains you to respond from reason rather than reflex. Over time, you'll notice something remarkable. You won't need the paper as often. The internal clarity will come faster. Detachment also sharpens decision-making because it protects you from manipulation. When someone tries to rush you, provoke you, or guilt you, emotional attachment makes you vulnerable. You react to relieve discomfort. But when you detach, you recognize the tactic without absorbing it. You slow the tempo, you say less, you think longer, you choose deliberately. That composure is powerful. It prevents you from surrendering your judgment to someone else's urgency. You must commit to valuing clarity over comfort. In high-pressure moments, comfort whispers, "End this quickly." Clarity whispers, "End this correctly." Choose clarity, even if it takes longer. Even if it feels uncomfortable. Emotional detachment gives you the patience to prioritize what is right over what is immediately soothing, and that patience compounds. Every calm decision strengthens your confidence in the next one. Remind yourself often that pressure is temporary, but consequences are lasting. Detachment helps you see beyond the present heat. It widens your perspective. It allows you to think in terms of principles instead of impulses. When you anchor yourself in values, integrity, patience, discipline, you don't need to scramble for the perfect reaction. You simply act in alignment with who you've chosen to be. Train your nervous system as well. Slow breathing is not a cliché, it is a tool. Inhale deeply for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 6. Repeat until your body settles. A calm body supports a calm mind. Under pressure, physiology drives psychology. Reverse that cycle intentionally. Take control of your breath and your thoughts will follow. Most importantly, practice reminding yourself that no single moment defines you. Pressure feels overwhelming when you treat every decision as final and absolute, but life is rarely that rigid. Detachment invites flexibility. It reminds you that mistakes can be corrected, paths can be adjusted, and growth continues. When you release the need for perfection, you free your mind to focus on sound judgment. You are not trying to become emotionless. You are trying to become sovereign over your emotions. There is a profound difference. Emotional detachment is not a wall, it is a filter. It allows wisdom through and keeps chaos out. And when pressure tests you, and it will, you will not crumble or lash out. You will pause, you will breathe, you will evaluate, and then you will choose with intention. So start today. Build the habit in small moments. Create space before reacting. Question your assumptions. Visualize outcomes calmly. Write when you feel overwhelmed. Breathe with discipline. Repeat these practices until they become instinctive. Over time, you will notice that pressure no longer dictates your decisions. It simply reveals your preparation. And that is inner peace in action, not the absence of pressure, but the presence of composure. Number 9, inner peace begins when you stop needing control over others. Inner peace begins the moment you loosen your grip on other people. Not when they change, not when they finally understand you, not when they behave the way you think they should. It begins when you stop needing to steer their thoughts, manage their reactions, or choreograph their choices. That craving for control is subtle. It hides behind good intentions. It disguises itself as care, responsibility, even love. But beneath it is tension. Beneath it is fear. And as long as you're trying to regulate what lives outside your own mind, your peace will always feel fragile. The Stoics were relentless about this distinction. Epictetus put it plainly. Some things are up to us and some things are not. It's simple, almost too simple, yet you resist it. You resist it because part of you believes that if you just try harder, explain better, argue smarter, push a little more, You can bend the world into a shape that feels safer. But that effort is exhausting, and it never ends. When you tie your emotional stability to someone else's behavior, you hand them the remote control to your inner state. You don't need to do that anymore. Peace isn't passive, it's disciplined. It's the deliberate choice to say, their mind is not my territory. Let that sink in. You are not responsible for managing another person's emotions. You are not obligated to correct every misunderstanding. You are not required to fix their opinions of you. When you try to control others, what you're really attempting to control is uncertainty. You're trying to eliminate the discomfort of not knowing how they'll act. But life doesn't give that guarantee. And the more you fight that truth, the more restless you become. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Notice the boundary. Your mind, not their behavior, not their tone, not their loyalty, just your mind. The moment you accept that boundary, something inside you softens. The tension in your chest eases. You stop bracing for impact. Because you finally understand that your stability doesn't depend on their cooperation. Start training yourself to pause when the urge to control arises. You'll feel it. It shows up as impatience, as the impulse to interrupt, as the need to correct. When that surge comes, breathe slowly and ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, release it deliberately. Not angrily, not dramatically, just quietly. Practice this daily. The pause is your power. Without it, you react. With it, you choose. And let's be honest, control feels good in the moment. It creates the illusion of strength, but it's brittle strength. It shatters the second someone refuses to comply. Real strength is steadier. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Much of your desire to control others comes from imagined outcomes, stories your mind invents about what will happen if you don't intervene. Challenge those stories. Sit with the discomfort instead of scrambling to eliminate it. That discomfort won't destroy you. In fact, it will refine you. Here's a practice you can adopt immediately. At the end of each day, reflect on one moment when you tried to influence someone's reaction. Don't judge yourself, just observe it. Ask, what was I afraid of? Usually, underneath the need for control is fear of rejection, fear of chaos, fear of being misunderstood. When you identify the fear, you weaken its hold. Awareness dissolves compulsion. Another exercise, deliberately allow someone to hold a different opinion without correcting them. Feel the tension rise. Let it sit. Don't rush to smooth it out. This is emotional weightlifting. Each time you resist the urge to control, you strengthen your composure. You prove to yourself that disagreement does not equal danger. That autonomy, both yours and theirs, can coexist. You might worry that detachment will make you cold. It won't. Emotional detachment in the Stoic sense isn't indifference. It's clarity, it's caring without clinging. It's engaging without becoming entangled. When you stop trying to control others, you actually create space for healthier connection. Because now you're not interacting from anxiety, you're interacting from choice. Tell yourself this often, I will guide myself, not govern others. Repeat it until it becomes instinct. Write it down if you need to. Your energy is finite. Every ounce spent trying to control someone else is an ounce stolen from your own growth. Redirect that energy inward. Improve your reactions. Sharpen your discipline. Deepen your patience. That is territory you truly own. There's a quiet freedom in letting people be who they are. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head. You stop strategizing how to extract certain responses. You stop tightening your jaw when things don't go your way. You begin to move through life lighter, not because everything is perfect, but because you've accepted the rules of the game. And here's the paradox. When you release control, you become more influential, not less. Calm is magnetic. Stability commands respect. When you're no longer trying to manipulate outcomes, your presence becomes grounded. Others sense that you aren't desperate for a specific reaction. That steadiness is powerful, but you can't fake it. It only comes when you've genuinely surrendered the need to control. So practice surrender daily. When someone behaves unpredictably, tell yourself, This is outside my domain. When someone misunderstands you, say internally, their interpretation is theirs. When someone resists your expectations, remind yourself, I control my response. This repetition reshapes your reflexes. Over time, you'll notice the shift. The urge to micromanage fades. The compulsion to fix diminishes. In its place is quiet confidence. Inner peace is not the absence of challenge. It's the absence of inner resistance to what you cannot command. Let people think what they think. Let them act as they choose. Let them reveal who they are. Your task is simpler, though not easier. Govern your mind. Guard your character. Choose your response. And when you feel that old impulse rising, the need to adjust someone else's trajectory, pause, breathe, step back internally. Ask yourself, what would it look like to let go right now? Then do it. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. This is not a one-time decision. It's a discipline, a daily recalibration. You want peace. Stop negotiating with the uncontrollable. Stop trying to choreograph other people's choices. Accept the boundary that the Stoics emphasized centuries ago. Anchor yourself there. Because the moment you stop needing control over others is the moment you reclaim control over yourself. And that is where peace has been waiting for you all along. Inner peace isn't something you chase down or wrestle into submission. It's something you allow. An emotional detachment, real, grounded, steady detachment is the doorway. Not because you stop caring, not because you become cold, but because you finally stop letting every passing emotion drag you around like a leaf in a storm. When you detach, you create space. Space between what happens and how you respond. Space between someone's opinion and your sense of worth. Space between a setback and your identity. And in that space, you rediscover your power. You realize that not every thought deserves your attention. Not every feeling deserves your obedience. Detachment is freedom. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you can feel deeply without being controlled completely. You can love without clinging. You can strive without desperation. You can lose without collapsing. So start small. Pause before reacting. Observe before absorbing. Let emotions pass through you instead of taking root inside you. The more you practice this, the lighter you'll feel. The calmer. The clearer. Inner peace isn't found in controlling the world. It's found in mastering yourself. And emotional detachment is where that mastery begins.